Please join me in the gathering words which are printed in your bulletin. And I would ask that you would respond in the bold print. Friends, we gather here in the protective shelter of this holy space to know the power of hope and healing love. We are free to pour out our grief, release our anger, face our emptiness, and know that in community we care for one another. Through unconditional love, we gather to comfort and support one another in this time of loss. We gather to hear words of hope. We gather to share memories of Renée's life, a life lived with heart and soul. We gather in the hope that our sharing and comfort of one another will drive away our despair and begin to heal our hearts. May each of us feel the comforting presence and the love and support of family, friends, and neighbors gathered with us. Let the warmth of a love that transcends death and this physical life enfold us and give us peace. Amen. On behalf of the faith community here at Gower Street United, I want to welcome all of you to our beautiful sanctuary and historic church. This has been a place for thousands of families over the years to grieve and to gather. And we want you to know today that we hold you in our thoughts. Our community tagline is open hearts, open minds, and open arms. And we do trust that each of you will feel that as we gather together to celebrate Renée's life. No matter who you are, where you come from, or how you come to be here, you are indeed welcome here with us in fullness today and every day. May the Great Spirit reside in each of our hearts as we move through this time together. I'm going to invite Melanie to come forward for the reading of a poem.
I actually decided to write a couple things down. And oddly enough, the one person I would have asked to proofread was Renée. I first met Renée when I was 12 years old, when my mom, Gail, and her dad, Mackie, started dating. If you had the pleasure of knowing her, you would know that her sarcasm, humor, and quick wit was unmatched, and her laugh was simply contagious. She was also stubborn and strong-willed, which I have come to learn over the years is a very strong Mackie trait. This was never so apparent than the time she took me to the old Ponderosa on Topsail Road. She was absolutely disgusted the moment we walked in, and it got worse from there. The salad bar was dirty, the steaks were overcooked, and the staff and management were hearing about it at length and louder than I would have liked. As a 12-year-old, I was simply mortified. I don't think there was a time that we didn't reminisce over my sheer embarrassment of that day. 30 years later, she was still adamant that that needed to be done, and I, to this day, do not agree. Behind the quick wit, sarcasm, and stubborn exterior was a kind-hearted, giving woman who deeply loved her family. Brad was the absolute love of her life, and her children, Sarah and Maggie, were her absolute pride and joy. Her favorite poem is about love, and I have been asked to share it with you, and it's also printed on the back of the bulletin. Love is a questing spirit, seeking where to find, a human frame to live in, a human heart to bind. A human heart to bind, dear love, and so I offer mine. Take this heart, and if you will, use it as bread and wine.
Steve.
afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Noseworthy, and I'm Renee's brother-in-law. I'm married to her sister, Karen. Brad asked me here today to talk a little bit about Renee, about what she meant to her friends and family. Over the past week, me and Brad were sitting around discussing a few things, and he had mentioned, he asked me out of the blue, he said, would you mind speaking at Renee's funeral? He could tell I was a little surprised when he asked me. I did MC Renee and Brad's wedding, and I never really got any feedback on how I did with that one, so I was a little shocked. So he saw that I was a little surprised, and he said, Steve, contrary to popular belief, Renee did actually like you. So how can you say no to that invitation? So the entire family is in disbelief that Renee has left us too soon. Renee's father, Loyola Mackey, passed away in February 2023. She is survived by her mom, Sandra Mackey, her sister and my wife, Karen Noseworthy, our children, Ben and Peyton, Renee's longtime partner, Gail Dirtle, and her daughters, Melanie and Natasha. Her in-laws, Gerald and Sandra Winsor, brother-in-law, Sheldon Winsor, and his wife, Becky, and their children, Meredith, Naomi, and Tanner. She was married to her husband, Brad Winsor, for over 23 years. Or as Renee would introduce him, this is my first husband, Brad. I remember when Brad first came on the scene, when they were going to Memorial University, all Renee's prior boyfriends had the common trait of being townies. And when Brad was from Grand Falls, and I remember thinking to myself, this poor bandit doesn't know what he got himself into. But he won her over, and they eventually married, and they had 23 great years of marriage. Brad told me, I always used to joke to Renee that it took a good baby to win her heart, and she would roll her eyes and agree. Brad, you and Renee have always been a good example of a couple who are partners, who balance each other, and I know how much you're going to miss her. Renee loved being a mom. She has 2 children, Sarah and Maggie, who are always the most important 2 people in her life. Sarah, your mom was so impressed in how brave you are, how kind in your artistic side, your humor, and how quietly confident you are. She knew that you are strong enough to take on any challenge. Maggie, your mom loved your sarcastic side. I wonder where you got that too. Your big heart and how you stand up for yourself and your friends. One of her greatest joys was watching you dance, and she loved how happy dancing made you. Renee was also proud that you were a children's summer camp counselor last summer, just like she had been during her summers in university. Renee was proud of a few things, including Best Hair contest during our high school graduation, but she was most proud of her daughters, Sarah and Maggie. So I first met Renee back in grade 12 on a student trip to Florida, one of those trips you do at the year end. We ran in the same circle of friends, and we got to know each other on that trip. If you knew Renee, as Melanie alluded to earlier, she has a good sense of humor, she's very quick-witted. Some may even say she had a hint of sarcasm in her. We got along pretty good, but unfortunately, most times I found myself on the opposing end of her humor and her dry wit. So when we were on that trip to Florida, this is when I first met her, I had bought this chain at this beach shop. And it kind of had like dog tags at the bottom of it, like, a soldier in the army would wear. Anyway, I thought it looked pretty good, I was in grade 12. And, so we're down at the pool, took off the shirt, I'm strutting around, I'm thinking I'm looking pretty good, and until Renee got a glimpse of the dog tags. She goes, hey Steve, one of those things. I didn't know you were in the army. Hey, nice dog tags. And she'd go by and she started giving me salutes and all this stuff, right? So within about a few hours, I had to take that chain off and went back into the suitcase, never to be seen again. 30 years later, as Melanie just alluded, which is pretty funny, she's still bringing them up. She was down at the house a few weeks ago and she said, hey Sarge, where's the dog tags? So she did make a joke at our wedding when she got up and spoke, and she made the joke that Karen must fondly be in love because she came home calling him Steve and not Pickles, so she knew it was part of the family. So over the history, there's always been some great rivalries. We had, some great fights out there, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, those sort of things, but none of them were never as tense as a rivalry as Renee and her sister, Karen, fighting over who stole each other's clothes from each other's closets. Renee and Karen had some intense battles about who took whose sweater, who stole this rain jacket, etc. Loyola and Sandra and Gail had to physically separate them at times. It was actually pretty comical. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I was smart enough never to get in between the two of them and fight over a pair of boots. They were also very close. Even though Renee and Karen had separate bedrooms, right up until Renee became a teenager, Karen would always go in every night and sleep in Renee's bed with her. As I mentioned before, Renee could be quite witty. One of my favorite stories of Renee was when we were in our early 20s and we were lined up at a bar downtown, and Great Big Sea was playing in the bar. Now this is before Great Big Sea became big, and they were playing one of the bars. And Alan Doyle was at the front door, and he was greeting people as they would come in. Hi, I'm Alan Doyle, Great Big Sea. Hi, I'm Alan Doyle from Great Big Sea. And he went up to Renee and said, hi, I'm Alan Doyle from Great Big Sea. And Renee came back, hi, I'm Renee Mackey, Great Big Deal. Always brings a laugh to me. You normally knew where you stood with Renee, but she also had a really big heart. I remember in university, we were both in the same class, and on the first day of that class, the professor stood up and said basically, there was a student in that class that had a hearing disability, and asked if anyone would volunteer taking notes for each lecture, and then give those notes to the student so they wouldn't miss anything. Renee raised her hand, volunteered right away, and she said she'd take the notes for that student. I remember going up to her after that class, and I said, Renee, what are you, nuts? You gotta go to every class now, you can't miss it. There's a class on Friday afternoon, what are you doing? And she goes, you know what, Steve? She goes, if it helps get that person through that class and gets them through the course, it's not a problem. Of course, I missed a few classes over that semester, and I went to her for those notes, and she could never give them to me. So her goodwill only went so far. So Renee was a teacher for almost 25 years at the College of the North Atlantic, and she loved being a teacher. Renee was always teaching, just like she would constantly correct the grammar on Brad's texts. Renee loved being a teacher, and she really enjoyed the people she worked with, starting with Carmel, Donna, Janet, Jerry and Mary, and now Pam, Karen, Andrea, Tony, Blair, and Arlene. And we apologize if we missed anyone, but just so you know, she loved working with you all. One person who wouldn't forget a name would be Renee. She remembered everybody's name. After her first class, usually with 20 or 30 students, she would get up and she would know everyone's first and last name. And sometimes they would ask how she did it. And she would always say back, it's because I'm so smart. Of course, we all know how hard Renee worked. She cared about her work, and she really wanted her students to do well. She wasn't easy. She was a tough but fair teacher. She took no BS from anyone. She loved an energetic, talkative, engaged classroom, because that's exactly what Renee was. Brad used to tell her that she became a teacher because she liked being the center of attention. Organ donation was Renee's ultimate gift. Renee's aunt had an organ transplant, so this was very important to the family. I can speak for the entire family when I tell you there are no words how much we're going to miss Renee.
Took my love and I took it down, climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills where the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Well, I've been afraid of changing 'cause I even children get older. I'm getting older too. Well, I've been afraid of changing 'cause I built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, even children get older. I'm getting older too. Well, I'm getting older too. Took my love, took it down. Oh, climbed a mountain and turned around. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, a landslide will bring you down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, a landslide will bring you down. Oh, the landslide will bring you down.
They that love beyond the world cannot be separated. Death cannot kill what never dies, nor can spirits ever be divided that love and live in the same divine principle, the root and record of their friendship. Death is but crossing the world as friends to the seas. They live in one another still. Of all the places that we could turn to in times of grief, and there are many faiths and traditions, the Christian scriptures is but one of them. And there are of course many others. However, I want to share with you today a story which is found within the gospel. One of the followers of Jesus, a man named John, he wrote about Jesus' life. It is in the gospel according to John that we read the most famous verse. For God so loved the world that God sent his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. One of the many stories that John records in his gospel tells us about a man named Lazarus, who was a dear friend of Jesus. And I want to share with you this story. Jesus and his disciples heard that Lazarus, who lived in a town called Bethany, was very sick. Now, Jesus loved Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha. And after 2 days, Jesus told those who were following him, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So by the time that Jesus arrived in Bethany, Lazarus had been dead in the tomb for 4 whole days. And Lazarus' sister Martha ran out to meet Jesus. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life, and if you believe in me and what I am doing, you will never die. Do you believe me? And she said, yes, I believe. Then Lazarus' other sister, Mary, came out to meet Jesus as well. And when Mary came to where Jesus was, and when she saw him, she fell at his feet, and she said to him, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and those gathered who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit, and at the same time he was greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Well, come and see." And Jesus wept. So those who were there shouted to the crowds, "See how he loved him." The story of Lazarus teaches us many important lessons for facing times of grief and sorrow in our lives. The first and foremost is that we need to take time to grieve. It is so important to take time to remember and to celebrate Renée's life and her legacy that has been left with all of you who loved her most. Gathering in communities such as today enables us to support one another in our grief and to know that even though we walk through death, we don't go there alone. We have the gift of community, and in and through it, the gift of unconditional love. We are called as human beings to walk with each other, and especially to walk with each other through times of pain. Sometimes we convince ourselves that what we need to do is to be strong and to press on for the sake of those around us. However, when Jesus came to Bethany to comfort the family of Lazarus, he did not brace himself or hold back his tears. We're told he cried out and he wept. So when we love someone very dearly, as Jesus loved Lazarus, it is natural to cry. And yes, it's natural to even be angry, because life is not always fair. Yet, grief is indeed an important part of the experience of human life as we travel through the grieving process when we experience any type of loss. Our spirits need each other in community, and our souls need to be held by one another. And this story in the gospel teaches us that we also need to grieve at times alone with our memories and thoughts, as Jesus wept about his friend Lazarus. There is a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And holding back tears does not mean that we are strong, and it might even mean that we are weak and scared to accept how we feel. There are those who never allow themselves to grieve properly, and this will affect them in days to come. And so it's okay to cry, it's okay to be angry, and it is okay to feel the loss that cuts like a knife. So as we gather today here in this holy space, we are all acutely aware of the fragility of human life. The days may be long, but the years are indeed short. Make each moment count, and I think that is what Renée would tell us all. This is what Renée did in her short time with all of us. It is important to grieve together as a community and in the quiet spaces and places of our hearts and our deepest memories. We live in a demanding world that tries to push us along to the next activity. However, when tragedy strikes, pause and grieve. You have many memories with your loved one, Renée, and they are indeed very precious. I have many myself, as Renee and Brad have been our neighbors on Oakley for many years. And I will miss asking Renee where she got that beautiful sundress and our conversations, especially in the summer, across the patios. So take time to remember, take time to grieve, and take time to remember and to celebrate Renee's life and her legacy that has been left with all of you. The story of Lazarus reminds us that deep within our beings is a spirit that indeed will never die. There is within the continuum of life which is called the Holy, the Great Spirit God, known by many different names. It connects us all, and the spiritual being holds our grief when the pain is too much to bear. And so, in closing, I have to tell you that I stand here today with no answers. And indeed, Renee's life was lived with gusto, but it was lived far too short. But I do know from my experiences that time will heal our bitterness, our sadness, our anger, and our pain, and she will indeed live on in all of you. That is her legacy, and it is ours to treasure and to keep in our mind and our hearts as we go forward. And so in the dark times, we sometimes feel like the Holy is very far away and does not understand how we feel. We here at Gower Street United hope that you find comfort today in our beautiful sanctuary, and that you will trust a spirit greater than yourself who is holding on to each of you and guiding you through this dark journey in your life. Know that death never has the final word. There is hope, and there is light, and there is life beyond this life. I invite you to hold steadfast to that through the care of each other and faith in life itself in the days ahead. Amen.
Take me home, you silly boy. Put your arms around me. Take me home, you silly boy. The world's not around without you. I'm so sorry that I broke your heart. Please don't leave my side. Take me home, you silly boy. I'm still in love. I'm still in love. I'm still in love with you.
The family asked to spend some time sharing our memories, And so if you have a special memory that you would like to share, just need to stand where you are and hopefully speak loud enough so that all of us can hear. No formality, just stand up where you are. Anyone? Are you too shy? Okay.
I'm Renee father-in-law. I've been the recipient of how we were started. And he was very quick as well to correct me when he felt my English wasn't as good as it should be. He didn't hesitate to let me know.
Just speak up a little bit if you can. Yeah. Is there anyone else? Okay, well, I would ask that you would please stand. And please join me in the commissioning, which is found in your bulletin. Renee, into the freedom of the wind and the sunshine, we set you free. Into the sadness and smiles of our memories, we let you go. Into the cycles of living and dying and rebirth, we let you take your place. Renee, may you rest in peace and love. May you rest in the peace, light, and love of all that is holy. Go safely home. And may you be all blessed with light and love in all of your lives. Amen.